Hey, May 40 here. I mean, I come to you from a place just bathed in love. All right, I spent all day with people I love and who love me. All right, I haven't been live streaming so much because I just love my life, love the people that I'm spending time with. And you produce very different live streams. You produce very different blog posts. You produce different books and novels, right, when you have love in your life. So I haven't always had an excess of love in my life. And so I've been at times quite cranky, quite weird, quite, attention getting, quite cruel, quite maladapted to reality. And it still hits me. Like at 11 o'clock last night, I woke up and I was just steaming mad, right? Just a minor interaction earlier in the day. I had experienced it as an attack on my dignity. I had experienced it as humiliating and demeaning and infuriating. And I just couldn't get back to sleep. I was like triggered, right? So I still get triggered plenty of times. But, I knew it would pass and eventually, work the problem out. But it's interesting to just kind of be aware of like what exactly, triggers you. Because for me, the thing that I consistently find the most triggering is, and this is going to sound really ridiculous, but any threat to my status. Consistently find the most 40, like, what the hell, man? I mean, what status do you have? Like, how could anyone threaten? You've got, one viewer right now. How could, anyone threaten, right? But that's just how it is, man. When people treat me like I'm stupid, or I feel like they're not living up to an agreement, or it's just kind of demeaning, man, I get triggered and my resentment comes out. And I don't know, I guess I'm that angry, kid who was in foster care for a few years and just like looking at the outside world as the enemy to debunk. And it's like, oh, F, da 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 da. I don't need anyone. All right. I can just, do my own thing. But what do you think? A whole lot of live streamers, tell me if I'm wrong, a whole lot of live streamers don't have any loving face-to-face interaction with people, prior to going on stream. In fact, many of us, I don't think we would be streaming nearly as much if we had love in our life, right? I've got love in my life. I'm not streaming so much, all right? Look, you should do streams reacting to your old streams. Spring 2018, 5 years later. Yeah, so another reason I haven't been streaming much is that I've been digging up my old streams and, finding them, uploading them to Rumble, to Odyssey, and even a few on YouTube. But if you want to find most of them, they are on Rumble. And quite a lot of them are on Odyssey. Some of them are on BitChute. Very few of them are on YouTube, unfortunately. But I found two streams that cause certain people to go mental. But I simply compared just the most innocent thing you can imagine, right? What could be more innocent? What could be more loving? All right, what could be more adaptive and pro-social than to simply have an honest, free-flowing, open exchange, comparing the biological centric worldview of a certain European political ideology of the 1930s into the 40s, and the theocentric worldview of the Torah. Like, what could be more innocent? What could be more powerful? Like, what could be more elevating? What could be more clarifying? What could be more inspiring? What could, better help someone lead a better and more productive life than simply, a fair-minded, intellectual, public-spirited, clarity-seeking comparison of the text of the Torah and Mein Kampf? I mean, what on earth, like, how could anyone go wrong doing, these sort of discussions? Like, what's the problem here? Like, to me, it just seems like the healthiest comparison possible. Like the biological centric, worldview that the Nazis had, for example, that got its, its wellspring from nature, that nature was the, ultimate reality. And that, whatever leads to survival whatever leads to thriving of your particular people, that is what's good, right? I mean, that just seems completely innocent to me, and yet all sorts of people just totally like,
Hey,
why
I'm
did
Luke
that
Ford.
happen?
I want to continue on with our crowd-pleasing series on comparing Torah with Mein Kampf, Judaism with Nazism. Where do they differ? Do they have anything in common? And once again, I have to give the all six.
So it sounds like nuts to think that these two antitheses could have anything in common, but they are both ideologies of in-groups. So everything, you can find things that it has in common. Like you can find things that America and Venezuela have in common. They're both in the Americas. And then you can find 87 things that they are different. You can think of things that you and I have in common, 76 things ways that we're different, right? So just because you point out that there are, say, some similarities between the state of Alaska and Indonesia, right, doesn't mean that these two places are very similar. It's just you talking about comparison and distinction, right?
6-digit test. So unless you can recite these 6 digits backwards, you shouldn't be in here because I'm going to be dropping some major red pills. I don't want to blow your mind. So you see those ads where they say that this is for professional drivers only, do not attempt. So the idea is that I'm dropping in here, therefore high IQ types only. This is
yeah, I should institute a 6-digit reverse, test. All right, here are the digits. If you can't recite these backwards, you do not belong here. Okay, 1, 8, 5, 6, 9. Right? If you can't recite those digits backwards smoothly and calmly, you do not belong in here. You shouldn't be here. Like, go watch Fox News.
Stream of love and inclusion, but only for people with IQs over 115. So 6 numbers for today, and I'm only going to say them once. Then you need to repeat them backwards. 3, 9, 2, 5, 6, 1. Okay, that's it. Now you need to repeat them backwards. That shows that you have a minimum IQ of 115, and that's what you need to be able to handle these ideas so you don't go insane. I don't want to be responsible for you.
Yeah, there's something dark about this comparison. Yeah, there's a lot of darkness in the world, and maybe some people can't handle looking at darkness. All right, not everyone's cut out to be a policeman. Not everyone's cut out to be a social worker. Not everyone's cut out to be a family law attorney. Not everyone's cut out to be a professional athlete. Right? A lot of life is absolutely brutal and harsh and dark. So, as an Orthodox Jew, do I eat gefilte fish? I do not eat any fish of any kind, never have, and unfortunately never will. I think fish are healthy. I think fish are good for you. I think it's a major shortcoming on my part that I'm still stuck in the patterns of my childhood, right? That I still haven't been able to muster the ability to eat fish and to eat meat. Luckily, I've got my beef organ capsules since I started taking them 2 years ago. I feel strong. Did a bunch of pull-ups the night before the show.
Losing your mind and doing anything self-destructive. Okay, hey, Bernard's in the chat room. So, B. Degenerate's in here. Excellent. Degenerate, you belong, man. This is a safe space for you. Okay, you are in the circle of trust. So, start off with the Messianic vision, as articulated in Isaiah chapter 2, is that all the peoples of the world will say, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his way so that we may walk in his paths. That the Torah will go forth from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And God will judge between the nations. He will settle the disputes.
So guess what? I think every people dreams that eventually all other people will recognize that they're the best, that they possess the ultimate truth about life, that they are the chosen ones of the universe, right? So this vision from Isaiah, all right, I think pretty much everyone has it. I think Mesoamerican tribes have it. I think Muslims have it. Christians have it. Atheists have it, Japanese have it. Like, everyone thinks that they are the center of the earth.
They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up swords.
Right. Everyone wants peace, right? On our terms, right? Whatever the terms are for the flourishing of your in-group. Everyone wants peace and recognition that their in-group is really the most profound, the most cutting edge, the most important. All right. So this messianic vision of Isaiah, I think, is also a pretty universal vision.
Sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Okay, that's the Jewish messianic vision, but it's very removed from the world that we see around us. So the Mein Kampf worldview, which there's no important differences between that and the alt-right worldview, is that the world is dog eat dog. You either conquer or you be conquered.
And maybe both are true, right? Much of the world is dog eat dog, but there is a tremendous amount to be gained from cooperation, working together. So particularly in very dangerous situations, right, having a strong in-group preference is probably adaptive. Right? In relatively safe and prosperous environments, having a strong in-group identity is probably maladaptive. Right? So the very same tendencies, the very same allegiances that are adaptive in one circumstance become maladaptive in another circumstance. I'm sure there are a lot of like harsh situations where having a strong religious faith is highly adaptive. In other situations, having a strong religious faith, which will invariably go with a strong in-group identity, in a multicultural world, it may not be as adaptive. So I'm right-wing. All my political tendencies are right-wing. In particularly dangerous times, right, people are more likely to vote for the right wing, right? In less dangerous times, right, more innovative, egalitarian, democratic solutions coming from the left may well be more adaptive.
You cannot flout nature's rules and hope to succeed. That there are certain immutable iron rules that run the universe. They are natural, they're biocentric, such as you don't find in nature two subspecies living in the same area. You won't find two types of pond scum in the same pond. Eventually, one type of pond scum will wipe out the other type of pond scum.
So I think that is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that more adapted species, more intelligent species have to, take, if pond scum wipe out, subspecies of pond scum, then we need to do the same thing. All right. I don't think that's true. I don't think that needs to be true. I don't think we need to take our morality from nature. At the same time, to set up a system of morality that ignores what's going on in nature, that ignores, basic evolutionarily developed tendencies, I don't think that's a winning formula in general, maybe for individuals. What are my top 5 streams of all time? I don't know, but I am compiling a list of my favorite streams. So it's on lukeforward.net. Just click highlights. So I'm compiling a list of my favorite streams and my favorite blog posts. And the chat says, 40, you could use an AI version of yourself that just does your podcast when you don't feel up to it. We need some classic Dennis Day Torah shows. What kind of mic was I using back then? The Bluebell. It's a little dusty. Oh man, it's way too dusty. So if I ever have a guest over and I kind of want to sabotage their performance, I'll just set them up with this dildo-looking mic, God forbid. It's a blue Yeti. Yeah, this is what I was using back in the day, man. And this is before I had the voice lessons, bro. So this is when I still spoke in a monotone. But can you imagine I was using this whole thing? Damn.
And it also applies in the rest of nature. You don't find two subspecies just living in peace together in the same geographic location.
Right, but that doesn't mean people can't. All right, and you do find cooperation in nature. Right, different species, frequently cooperate. So this is very narrow perspective on the nature dynamic. All right, 40. How did you come to your nuanced worldview? Who influenced me to a more nuanced worldview? I think the number one thing that brought me to a nuanced worldview is just humiliation. Just humiliation after humiliation after humiliation after humiliation. So I'm thinking about one very, very painful humiliation. So I was making an LA friend, right? Friend in LA is probably a looser term than friends in other places, but I was making an LA friend, just a great guy, graduate of 3 elite universities, someone who's earning over $1 million a year, someone who knew everybody who mattered in LA. And this person was kind to me. This person enjoyed me. We had a great acquaintanceship, even verging on friendship. There was nothing that I enjoyed more in my entire life than talking to this man. Nothing. But I fell into my habit of saying inappropriate things, and I would see that I would offend him, and I just ignored it because I so just wanted to say what I wanted to say and make the jokes that I wanted to make. And then one day he just exploded at me in front of people important to me and just ripped me to shreds. And then I ripped him back, and we basically haven't spoken since. I mean, I just tore up the most important relationship in my life. I mean, I was not in his top 50 relationships, but I just so enjoyed hanging out, talking, schmoozing with this guy, and I blew it up because I just didn't pay any attention to his signals that he found some of my jokes offensive, and I just blew it up. And like those kind of humiliations, I think, driven me to a more nuanced worldview. Also, because I put so many of my ideas and perspectives and debates and podcasts and videos and blog posts and books, put so much of myself online, I don't enjoy being humiliated. Like when what I say, what I do online is then critiqued and caricatured and debunked, and or when I look back at it, 2 years later, 5, 10, 20 years later, it's like, oh, that's so embarrassing. I don't like being embarrassed. I don't like being humiliated. I don't like feeling like a total idiot. And so I found that one of the best ways to reduce your chances of being completely humiliated, blowing up important relationships, destroying your life prospects. Like, I have no idea how much my online activities have cost me. Right? I don't have no idea, how many, women I didn't get to date and mate and, have a relationship with and possibly marry because of things I've, said online. I have no idea of the friends that I've missed out on, the sense of community that I missed out on, the, business opportunities that I missed out on because of, the crazy things that I say online. But as a result of, the waterfall of humiliation that has kind of accompanied me over the course of my life, it's made me want to become more, what's that? Not robust, but when you're strong and you can bend with the wind and bend with circumstances, bend but not break. Anti-fragile. Like, I wanted to become more anti-fragile. I wanted to reduce the amount of times I gratuitously, needlessly make a complete tosser of myself. I think 12-step has helped because I'm still engaged in a very lengthy project of cleaning up the wreckage of my past. The people that I've done, needless harm to, I've been just needlessly cruel. And so wanting to reduce the amount of times that I have to go make amends to someone, I don't like having to make amends. Also, I'd say that the book Virtually You, The Dangerous Powers of the E-Personality, had a very profound effect on me because it was very clear to me how my E-personality created a lot of trouble in my life, and it was a major reason why certainly very estimable people called me toxic. I didn't like that. 12-step helped me, I think, kind of calm down. And when you calm down, so whatever I did to calm down, so let's just say that I've calmed down over the past 10 years. And maybe it's 12-step work, maybe it's 10 years of psychotherapy, maybe it's the Alexander technique. But when I calm down, I have less and less need for you to give me a thumbs up, or for you to applaud me, or for you to support me in any way, or press like, or view the stream. So when I have less need for attention, right? When I calm down, I have less need for attention. When I have less need for attention, I make better choices, right? If I'm calm, I have less need to debunk the outside world, to treat the outside world as the enemy. I have less need to show off. I have less need to get revenge against my enemies. I have less need to, show people who disrespected me how amazing I am. So I can come to you right now from a day filled with love, with shared vulnerability, with honesty, with openness, with connection. And I'm going to go out from here to bathe in another river of love, honesty, connection. And that calms you down. It makes it easier for me to see where I was wrong. So one character trait that I may have, my father said this, and my father didn't necessarily overflow with compliments about me. My father said that I was more willing to admit that I was wrong than anyone he knew. And so also I'd say reading widely, and then having less of an emotional need to show that I was wrong, that I was right, and making it less and less effortful to admit that I was wrong, or that I have room to grow in an area that helped make things more nuanced. I would say moving from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, I was like 80% externally validated, right? 80% of the meaning, satisfaction that I got from what I was doing online came from external validation, compliments, feedback, viewership, readership, etc., like that. Now I would say it's 80% internally validated. If I feel good, if I feel proud, if I'm standing behind what I say, then I don't have the desperate need for other people to buck me up. So right now I'm speaking to 4 people live on on YouTube, and it's okay because I'm internally validated. This is just a little bit of fun to try to work out some ideas as we head into the Shabbat. Just share the love, share the joy that I've gotten to experience in my life. Yeah, reality always wins if you're at all sane, right? If there's anything about you that's sane, you're going to embrace reality. Okay, Elliot Blatt. Speaking of sanity, what's going down, bro?
Blessings, bro. Whoa. I thought you'd given up streaming. Yeah, lots going on, Luke. Lots going on. I got to relay a story, though. I mean, if you're feeling down on yourself, it's not clear that you are. Okay.
Go.
So, I've mentioned, I've talked to you in the past about this friend of mine who's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right. And so a couple of weeks ago, he checked himself into rehab because he felt he had no hope. So he's since moved back to Vermont. So this is taking place in Vermont. And, he went, he checked himself in, and he was incommunicado for a week. And then he sort of became communicado again. And then he was talking about his plight and how he had no energy, couldn't get up, couldn't get out of bed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's depressed. And so I sort of offhandedly said, well, have you tried modafinil? Very offhandedly, right? Not expecting to be taken seriously, right? And, but he takes what I say seriously. I've known him for 30 plus years, so. And so a week goes by, and then he calls me back, and he's like, you know what? I got the nurse to get me a prescription for modafinil, and I feel great. And he checked himself out, and I don't think he stopped drinking, but he's at least out and about, and he's off the mat, as it were. So I think you could take a little, his recovery, or his steps towards recovery. He can attribute to you, Luke. So
yeah, but
put that in your ledger. Put that in the old ledger.
Yeah, but it probably would have been better for him to stay in rehab. So modafinil is a powerful weapon, but bro, if it's misused, not everyone can handle their modafinil.
Well, I can connect you to if you want. But I do want to get your so he's in Vermont, which is kind of a semi-socialist state. And so he got his first prescription of modafinil for $1, but sort of the retail price, the sort of the over-the-counter price is like $800 a month.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah.
And
So
then I remembered you.
Yeah, I definitely. It's illegal to buy modafinil overseas from even very reputable places like rxshop.md. I definitely cannot recommend that anyone breaks the law by importing modafinil from India on sites like RX Shop MD. I mean, God forbid.
So what
people,
you're saying is, whatever I do, I should not recommend that he go to RX Shop MD.
Definitely do not go to
Do
RX.
not do that.
Do not do that.
Don't even consider it.
Yeah, don't even consider it, because like if you order from there, there's probably like a 1 in 10, 1 in 20 chance that customs confiscates your package. And you know what happens then? The RX Shop ND sends you another package at no extra price.
Oh my God. That's a fate worse than death.
It's like facilitating bad behavior. And it's crazy. Like, some people buy their pharmaceuticals from places like RX Shop MD because they find that there's no qualitative difference between what they get from RX Shop MD versus paying $20 a pill, for, over the counter at an American pharmacy.
They're bastards.
Bastard cows. Definitely don't go to
Don't do that.
Like RX Shop.
All right, I definitely will not recommend that he go to RX Shop MD. That's the last thing I'm going to do. Okay, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah, people could go wrong, and I'd hate to have that on my conscience.
Yeah, good. So that's sort of like I'd call that a win for the stream, as it were, for the broader Luke community. So let's see the other story. So I started using the app. You have an iPhone, right? It has that fitness tracker.
Yes.
Do you use that fitness tracker?
Yes.
Okay. So I started using it. I scoffed at it early on. I just didn't like it. But amazingly, I sort of allowed myself to be suckered in to using it. And it really is an incentive. It actually kind of works.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I did like 9 miles today walking.
Wow, that's great.
Which is pretty solid, And so I'm going to keep that going. I'd recommend anyone interested to check it out. Anyway, so that was topic number 2. Topic number 3. So you've been following Ralph's redemption arc?
No, I have not.
Well, from what it appears, he's kicked the drugs, and he's on a serious weight loss campaign.
Oh.
And it does seem sincere, and his voice seems different. His demeanor seems different. Now, I caught this because Stephen J. James did a video talking about what he knows about weight loss. And he had some insightful things to say. But it was really heartening to see, that people can turn their lives around. And he seems to be doing it. So,
wow.
So, yeah. So I figured, well, if Ralph can do it, I can do it, So I'm really this is the summer of weight loss for me. I'm really going all out. And
how much do you want to lose? How much do you want to lose?
Minimum 20, but I think 30 is probably what I really want to lose. Which seems like a tall ask at my age. But I think it's an outside possibility.
You know what I want? You know what I
what
want?
Do you want,
Luke? This is what I want, and this is what I want for you too. I
Tell
want to feel good about everything I do today. So after I got over my rage and resentment and managed to fall back to sleep around 3 a.m., after I got up at about 5:30 a.m., aside from one mistake that I made, no, two or three mistakes, or related that I made this afternoon. Aside from that, I feel good about everything I've done today. Like, that's my goal. Like, I want to feel, behind, supporting, feeling good about every single thing I do in the day. That's my goal. That's my dream. Like, to have everything working together. So I don't want my streaming life, for example, I don't want that kneecapping my social life or my religious life or my work life. All right. I don't want what I eat to be against my best interests. I don't want my exercise or lack thereof or too much to be against my best interests. I don't want the things I say, either on stream, off stream, for laughs, for serious, for money, for love, I wanted everything working together. That's my goal. Religion, community, society, friends, walking down the street, getting on the bus, walking into a kosher restaurant, doing a live stream, reading a book, eating a snack. If I get up at 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever it is, I want it all to work together. I don't want to have swaths of my life that consistently through the day that I regret. That's my dream. That's what I aim for. That's what I hope for. What do you think?
I think it's marvelous. I think I see that. I see the world similarly. I think that's how I approach life now. You want to sort of go to bed with like no regrets.
Oh yeah, a minimum. You want to, like, particularly early in the day. Like if you can get off to a great start. I mean, that's fantastic, because I let myself off the hook after 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. because I'm typically getting up at 4 a.m. or so. So if I just want to Netflix out after 6 p.m., that's fine. But particularly early in the day. But I don't want to regret things I say, in business. I don't want to regret things I say at shul. I don't want to regret things I say on a live stream. I don't want to regret things that I eat. I don't want to regret. I want as few regrets. I want it working together, right? I don't want to be at war with myself. I don't want to be. I've got so much self-hatred just under the surface that I don't want it to erupt.
Yeah, I don't understand self-hatred.
Really?
I understand regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if that's what you mean by self-hatred. But like hate, like, I don't know, self-hatred. You like get up and you look at Luke and you say, "I hate thee." You look in the mirror.
I looked in the mirror this afternoon and I said, "You stupid mother effer," and I just went off for like 2 minutes, just cursing myself out.
Well, I think like from like when I was there's like in Zen Buddhism they said it's the people that are self-critical that don't need to be self-critical. The people that aren't self-critical are the people that need to be self-critical. So you're holding yourself to really high standards, and you feel like you could meet higher standards. So that's you know what I mean?
That's a really nice way of phrasing it. But I remember a few months ago, I really, tell me if I said the story, I really offended two women when they were just schmoozing with me. And one was saying, I was so good at basketball, I played with the boys. And I responded, "Oh, I played with the boys too until the police picked me up." And they were like horrified and offended, and basically that was it. They wouldn't, they were not interested in talking to me again. And so I've made those kind of dark jokes at the wrong times to the wrong people hundreds and hundreds of times in my life. And so when I do it again, it's like a really sick feeling. It's a really sick feeling. And then I feel a little self-hatred. It's like, F you, 40.
I go about, okay, I could have been in similar situations where, and particularly with women, where you make jokes, right? And you sort of expect them to be appreciated. And they're not only not appreciated, they're horrified.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, you'd rather people not be horrified. At the same time, you'd rather they could actually appreciate the joke. So is it really your fault that they couldn't? Depends if the joke was actually good or not. But if you offer to the world as a love offering a great dark twisted joke, and these women don't understand it, is it really your problem?
Yeah, my approach is, if you're offending people, you're hurting people, unnecessarily. Like, there are times and places where it's okay to offend people for some higher good, but just for just for making a joke that people don't enjoy, particularly in a professional setting. not a great idea.
Well, Luke, but we're both old enough to remember, right? The pre-woke era, where the workplace was nothing but raunchy jokes.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it was a free-for-all,
Yeah.
and it was fun,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And suddenly those jokes became offensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, are you blaming yourself for something that you need not blame yourself for? I mean, the fun we used to have and the jokes, I mean, everything was a double. I'm thinking it's one particular workplace when I was young. It was so much fun.
Was that at the
I
Pond
walked
Theater?
to work with a...
Is that the Pond
No,
Theater?
I worked at a film lab. So this is after the theater.
This isn't you mopping up the splooge.
No, this is post-splooge mop-up. Yes, this is... so I graduated from like $7 an hour to $9 an hour. So this is working at a film lab. So in the old days, prior to the digital everything, there was one film to tape transfer lab in San Francisco. So if you were shooting what we're called a film, so we used to get a lot of Lucas's films. Lucas was based up here. So what are called dailies, right? And then all the things that were shot in 35 millimeter, then transferred to videotape to be edited, right? So that's where I worked. This place, which is now closed, no longer exists because everything's done directly on digital. But yeah, it was a lab. It was a film lab and a film to tape transfer facility. Okay, I worked there for about like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and boy, was it fun! Like everybody there was like sort of an aspiring sort of filmmaker, actor. You know, everybody kind of wanted to be in the show business, but they didn't quite get there. But they were still really funny people nonetheless, you know? And it was so, you know, these guys, they were just so funny, like from, you know, from head to tail, you know? And I used to walk to work, you know, with a skip in my step, knowing that it would just be a lot of fun working there, you know? And then, you know, shortly after 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 years later, this woke stuff started happening. But I don't think you can take people's offense necessarily as you having committed a crime. Well, now you could gauge your shots. You know, you could probably read the room better, maybe here and there. But I just don't think I would beat myself up over
that. It's a sick feeling when you unnecessarily alienate people, particularly when they have the ability to hurt you.
True. So you're sort of measuring yourself against your goals within that community. And that's why it's a feeling.
I'm measuring my sense against the goal about feeling good as I go through the day. Now, there would be plenty of people in my life who'd be absolutely appropriate to tell that joke to, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, when two people who are important to me are offended and have completely changed their perspective on me from having quite positive perspective on me to a very negative perspective on me, and then telling other people about the horrible thing that I said, and then there, you know, wider repercussions as the ripples just keep moving out. It's not a good feeling, particularly when there are plenty of people that I can tell the tasteless things to.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, I think that's why you stream. You need this outlet.
Yeah.
You need that outlet.
Need the outlet.
No. All right. Well, you know, I can't tell you what's best for you, but like, there was a time, you know, once, you know, where what you did was probably very innocuous, or is not considered offensive, and the only reason you have these bad feelings is because other people react to them. They weren't objectively wrong.
Well, I just want to go on the basis of reality and what works and what doesn't work. I mean, so you're talking about principles and I'm talking about interests. And so I want to take an interest in my own best interests. right? You're talking about principles. People shouldn't be offended. That there should be more robust speech allowed in social engagements. People shouldn't be so touchy. And
But maybe that's your role, Luke. Maybe that's your role, to be the one that sort of, maybe you're the court jester, Luke, like it or not. And you're supposed to play that role in a community.
Yeah, no,
right?
I think you're right. I'm like Israel's suffering servant. I mean, for their sins, right? I am afflicted. Right? I am scourged for their oversensitivity. I am
right. You have to take these beatings, right?
Yeah.
This is you're doing a service for them.
Yeah.
You don't have to internalize the meaning of the beatings. You just have to know that you have to endure these beatings because they can't handle what you're trying to bring forward. So you have to be right.
Right.
So it's like, you didn't do nothing, bro. You didn't do nothing.
I mean, I've got nothing that people should look at me and take pleasure in my looks, but I'm despised and abandoned by women. I'm a man of great pain. I'm familiar with illness, and I'm one from whom people literally hide their faces. Like, I am despised. I mean, and it is their sickness that I am carrying. It is their pain that I carry. Yet people assume that I've been afflicted, that I've been struck down by God, that I've been socially humiliated, that I've been pierced, that I've been beaten, I've been robbed and denigrated and degraded for my offenses, as though it was my wrongdoings, and it was the punishment for their sins have been laid upon me, and by my wounds are they healed, because all of them, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of them has turned to his own way. But for some reason, God has caused the wrongdoing of all these losers to fall on me. Like, I am oppressed, I am afflicted, yet do I open my mouth like a lamb to the slaughter? I am like a sheep that is silent before his shearers, and I don't open my mouth. Oppression and judgment take me away. Like, I am cut off from the land of the living, right? For the wrongdoing of the Goyim, right? All right, I received the blows. But I don't know.
I really touched a nerve. I touched a nerve. Wow. Wow, bro. I gotta let that sink in. So, what about Chuck Johnson, Luke? Are you still a fan of Chuck Johnson?
Well, I was fan. I don't think it was ever the right word. I give him his due that he says some interesting things, and I also give him the due that he says a lot of ridiculous things. And
so,
what do you think?
Well, I caught a stream with him about a week ago, and it was very amusing. So it was Chuck Johnson's stream himself. So at one point, he had Richard Spencer on, and then he dropped off. And at another point, Laura Loomer came on the stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he was perfectly cordial and amicable with her, And then, she basically hates DeSantis and loves Trump.
Yeah.
Chuck Johnson hates DeSantis. Everybody hates DeSantis for some reason. I don't have an opinion one way or another. But the only two, so Loomer and Johnson were very pro-Trumpers back in 2016, right?
Yeah.
And then Chuck seems to have turned on Trump, but Loomer has been steadfast in her support. So they were cutting it up. They were, seemed to not discuss Trump. That was the third rail, but they did both hate DeSantis, so there was some common ground. And so they talked for a while, then Loomer finally dropped. And then Richard came on, and Richard hates DeSantis for some other reason. And but there's no love between, it's like this idea of idea clusters, where this is what Paul Gottfried once, I think you can attribute to Paul Gottfried, this idea that certain ideas sort of cluster together, like anti-vax with conservatism, with those things all sort of oscillate, they all sort of cluster together. And so the conservative thing is one set of idea clusters. And then the liberal thing is quite another. It's egalitarianism, it's all this other stuff, and those ideas cluster together. And so if one idea from one camp goes into the other idea of the other camp, it's seen as a violation. So it's pretty amusing. But, Chuck Johnson did reveal some stuff about his childhood. There perhaps was some sort of sexual abuse. And I do think that sort of informs his conspiratorial bent, because he's incredibly conspiratorial. It's just it's just too much for my taste. But I do like listening to him.
Yeah.
Time.
I mean, I would say that, if you can stomach getting one valuable insight for 9 trash insights, then you're not going to be disappointed, right? He's going to do better than 10%.
Yeah,
but he may not do better than 20%.
Yeah, it's just a weird way of going through life trying to ferret out information.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, you have to be a certain person at a certain time in your life where you're willing to, wade through all the BS for the under news that you don't get anywhere else. Like, there are insights that Chuck Johnston brings. There's information he brings that you can't get anywhere else.
That's true. Well, that's probably about all I got, bro. I think we're caught up.
Okay. Blessings, bro.
All right. Blessings.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Take care.
This is N Quarter talking with Mickey Kaus.
It was popular. I mean, that's the weirdest thing about the Dobbs decision. It was liberals who thought their legalized abortion would not be popular with voters. And since Dobbs was overturned, I mean, a little bit to my dismay, I got to say, I'm a pro-lifer, but it's been put to the voters over and over again, and liberals ought to be very happy with that. But they never believed it. That's why they needed Roe v. Wade.
Well, there is a point with both the administrative agencies and the Supreme Court together, which you just made, which is with the overturning of Roe and Dobbs, democracy is working. I'm not a pro-lifer. I like the way it's working. The Republicans are moderating their position awfully fast, in the historical context, but they're honing in on 15 weeks, 12-week bans, not total bans, exceptions, whatever you guys want. And they're vowing to make incremental progress in the future. Good luck with that. And but so the Republican position was pro-democracy, and democracy worked. The Democratic position is anti-democracy. Let's have the agencies do it. Let's have the courts do it. And that's been proven not to work. It didn't work with Roe because Roe was unpopular. Roe gave.
That's a fantastic point there by Mickey Kaus, right? It's good for democracy that Roe v. Wade was overturned. And the Democrats wanted to rule through, judicial fiat. And it's much better for our country if these things are voted on, even if that's good for Democrats and bad for Republicans.
Birth to the pro-life movement.
Yes.
Roe didn't stick. So maybe you don't go through the courts next time.
Right. Liberal ideas might
That's a great point.
be more popular than either they or I think they are. Another thing DeSantis talked about, which you really have to look up, and I mean, I guess everyone is going to be hearing this, but it made me think I can't wait for the debates, was David Sachs asked him, this was just toward the end before I thought, okay, I give up on this cutting in and out, ask him about the Disney fight. And as with MSNBC spending all of, and I think maybe, I don't know if CNN did it, spending all of 2020 and 2021 calling him Governor Death Santis, and then it turns out his COVID policies saved more lives and saved businesses and saved little kids from becoming retarded when they couldn't get enough oxygen through their masks. Once he's allowed to explain things, I mean, this Disney hysteria. One thing I wanted to tell you about the Disney hysteria, because you know how much I love making fun of GOP donors, many of whom are among my acquaintance. And I've noticed that the big donor types, they raise the Disney thing and say, he's not pro-corporation. It's corporate welfare, you idiots. If that's what they want, I mean, man, they got to get out more. They got to talk to some blue collar workers.
What was his explanation for Disney? Because I mean, I can come up with one, but he could probably come up with a better one.
Yeah, no, he explained that he explained the whole little kids being told at age 4, oh, you can choose your own gender, and being shown very explicit sexual material, so explicit that, as he points out, when he simply showed the material they were removing from public schools on the 6 p.m. news, local news, of course, none of the national media covered. Local news had to cut away from it because it was inappropriate to run on local TV. That's how disgusting it is. And he said, look, parents are complaining. If parents want to talk to their own kids about pronouns and changing your gender, they're perfectly free to, but let's stick to the basics of teaching them stuff. And also, by the way, any time spent on talking about pronouns and you can change your gender is not spent teaching them stuff they need to know. So he said, this is what we do. And Disney has been becoming more and more woke, and they're very powerful in the state of Florida, and they've been throwing their weight around. And they came out very heavily on the other side of this. And talks about their programming that has become extremely woke. And he said, look, they have benefits that other gigantic amusement parks in Florida don't have. Universal doesn't have it, and SeaWorld doesn't have it. So yeah, we voted to take it away from them, and it's been extremely popular.
The analogy that I came up with that worked for me is, suppose Disney were a mining company and it dominated the politics of the state the way mining companies often dominated the politics of, say, Western states. And it had fought, every safety regulation, every environmental regulation, and it was very effective. And a new governor came in and said, I want to regulate you for safety. And if you lobby against it, I'm going to fuck you every way I possibly can. So I'm threatening you the way politicians do. I'm going to take away whatever I can take away legitimately from you because you're throwing your weight around. And that's just democracy. That's the way democracy works. It's the opposite of log rolling. It's you trade, you agree not to oppose somebody's bill, they agree not to take advantage of you. It's not retribution for speech any more than voting against somebody because you don't like what they say is retribution for speech. Disney's big claim is their First Amendment rights are being violated, and you can carry that principle so far that you don't have a democracy anymore because nobody can take anybody's ideas seriously because that would be violating their speech. So I was hoping he made that argument. The throwing the weight around argument is the basic point, but the idea that somebody lobbies against you, you can't lobby against them because that's retaliating is insane.
That's another great point there by Mickey Kaus. Right, this is Chris Kavanaugh from Decoding the Gurus.
Nothing, right? He's just he's like Dave Rubin-esque, not even that charismatic of a host. His content is relatively empty. And he turned down an offer for $50 million a year from the Daily Wire, or maybe it was $50 million over 3 years.
Oh, yeah, so here he's talking about Steven Crowder and Dave Rubin and right-wing punditry. So Chris Kavanaugh on the left.
From his fans and followers, I'm hoping the answer is no.
Well, the thing is, I think that's
talking about will Tucker Carlson succeed on Twitter?
Plan. Like I believe he's migrating, like a whole production company and stuff, and it's untested as a like to make Twitter the primary medium for that is, I think, untested, and I suspect will go relatively badly. We'll see. Like, because people watch things on Twitter. Do people watch like 15 or 20-minute segments on Twitter? I don't know.
I don't think of Twitter as a place to watch videos.
No,
and I'm not on there much anyway. I kind of pop in and read stuff, and I get out.
That's a good choice. But I do think that Tucker has such an inbuilt fan base that pretty much any platform he goes on, like, you just have to factor into the Steven Crowder, who is an absolute, nothing, right? He's just he's like Dave Rubin-esque, not even that charismatic of a host. His content is relatively empty, and he turned down an offer for $50 million a year from the Daily Wire, or maybe it was $50 million over 3 years. But that's the kind of money that is sloshing around, and that he's much less famous than Tucker. And then like Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, all of them have huge incomes, like from their Substacks and their podcasts. So you absolutely can support yourself if you're a big enough figure. So Tucker, I think, is going to stick around, unfortunately. But I don't know what's going to happen with the Twitter as a platform to host them. That seems like a bad bet.
You're talking about Substack. I just see somebody's asking about Glenn Lowry. I also think of him as a pundit. of sorts.
Yeah.
And he has a Substack and he has a day job. That's the thing. Like some of these guys, there's so many blurred lines. And I understand the difference between pundit and guru, I think. But someone's asking here about Glenn Lowry. Would you decode someone like him, Chris? Is he guru-y enough, or is he just a pundit?
I think one of the things is like Matt and I have a very low bar for considering someone. Like we don't, because maybe initially we felt a bit worse if we were going to cover someone, right? But then whenever we.
So I can't speak too highly of the left wing podcast Decoding the Gurus, but even if you're on the right, there's a lot of good stuff here.
Like kind of started using the Gurometer and thing, it felt more like we're saying, here's a template. How well do these people fit into it? And that means we can cover people that don't fit it, particularly well, or fit it in some aspects and don't. So there's no real issue for us to cover people that don't fit the template. But the main criteria is like, are they interesting, or is there something actually worth analyzing in their content? And in the case of pundits, polemical pundits, like the polemical playbook is pretty well established. So what would be interesting to us is if there's some aspect which is, unique or unusual about the content. And with Glenn Lowry or John McWhorter or so on, there's various people that definitely think that they fit. Like Aaron Rabinowitz is always going on about John McWhorter. So there would be no issue to cover them. But I think that they would fall closer to the like pundit end of the spectrum. It's just that they're a little bit more like libertarian inclined or heterodox pundits. And that is what it is. Like, so yeah, but like Coleman Hughes, Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, there wouldn't be an issue to cover them. But I just think in some respect we might end up saying like, well, that's just their opinion a lot, right? Like, and we're not really trying to say.
And that's not what Decoding the Gurus does. They don't go, they're wrong in their opinions. They decode how pundits and gurus operate. They analyze their speech, their reasoning, their modus operandi.
Do we politically align with the people that we cover? Because in most occasions the answer is not really, and it's not that interesting to know that like Matt and I don't share the political views of Dave Rubin, right? It's not mysterious. The one that I'm surprised about, Amber, that repeatedly surprised, is like that my political leaning, and I think Matt's as well, is like center left, moderate, normie, lefty type, right? But people invariably seem very confused about this, and they a bunch of people assume that we're extremely far left or something like that, or so I just always find that strange, because like the very first
your
episode,
podcast, do they think that?
Yeah, we get various feedback from people that like either assumes as a default that we're progressive and that we just misspoke about something, or the less common one is like that we're actually like right wing, but we're just very secretive.
Oh, there's a price to pay for always being sarcastic and mocking and telling tall tales. So I gave someone a gift today, and they were so used to me being mocking, so used to me being sarcastic, so used to me, I guess, making fun of people and cutting people down, that they thought I was running some kind of scam. And I was giving like a very generous gift. But it's also interesting how everything's a Rorschach's test. So someone gave you a very generous gift. Would you immediately assume they're trying to screw you over? Like, would you immediately assume, hey, I'm not worthy? Or do you basically feel pretty good about yourself, and someone gives you a generous gift and you go, oh, that's nice. That's lovely. Isn't life good? I appreciate my friends. So some people, when you give them a gift, their immediate reaction is, you must be trying to screw me over. And another person's reaction is, I've been hurt before, so I need to put up defenses. And another person is like afraid that you really have given them a beautiful gift, and they're just getting overwhelmed by vulnerability, possibly verging on tears that someone's been kind to them. Like, other people have a lot of really bad experiences with men, and they're so used to men screwing them over, they're so used to men lying to them, so used to men manipulating them and treating them badly. Now, of course, what's going on? Let's say a woman is used to being lied by men and treated badly by men. She is attracting certain type of man in her life. Now, is that her fault? Is she a bad person because she's attracted a lot of bad men into her life? No. I mean, she's coming from her own wounded place, right? Hurt people, damaged people attract damaged people into their life. Like, the worst thing about being an under-owner is that you attract other under-owners into your life. The worst thing about being a debtor is you attract other suboptimal people into your life. The worst thing about being an alcoholic, a drug addict, or a sex addict, or a love addict, or a shopping addict, or a gambling addict is that, you attract a lot of bad people into your life. So I have tended to attract women into my life who would fulfill my own deeply twisted, sick need for abandonment. All right. Women who are very likely to abandon me, women who are likely to have contempt for me. I frequently just have found them absolutely irresistible. That's my template that I just want to be hurt by, women and let down so that I could, replay the various abandonments of my childhood over and over.
About it. But yeah, I just find
Kavanaugh.
the the political assessments are a source of interest, because I don't think there's any mystery. Like it's really superficial. it's not hard to tell, but yeah, it does come up.
Well,
so,
that kind of answers my next question, because it was going to be about followers of pundits versus followers of gurus. Are they generally the same, even though pundits and gurus have some differences?
Yeah, I think that is an interesting wrinkle, because if you look at the trigonometry people, or you could say some Twitch streamers and those kind of influencer types, the influencer themselves might not be exactly like a Jordan Peterson style self-help figure, but they often end up with a following who react to them in a really really protective, hugely parasocially connected way. And there are things that people can do that cultivate that. And
okay, parasocial. So when I do this show as a supplement to my life, it's it usually works out pretty well. When I do my blogging, my online activities as a supplement to my real life, that tends to work pretty well. When I substitute this show or my online activities for real relationships, or because I'm failing with real relationships, because people are turning their backs on me, because I've allowed relationships to fray, because people have gotten tired of me, people have come to distrust me or to become disgusted with me, or they don't like things that I've said or written online, and so I'm getting isolated. And then I try to fill that hole in my soul through live streaming or writing blogs or seeking attention online. That doesn't tend to work out. So say with talk radio or Fox News or whatever your thing is, right? If you're enjoying the news or you enjoy a live stream as a supplement to your life, if you enjoy some talk radio as a supplement to your life, that tends to work out really well for people. But I remember when I was basically bedridden for 6 years in my 20s with debilitating chronic fatigue syndrome that turned out to be from my lifelong stupid vegetarian diet. I was so isolated, so lonely, that I became incredibly invested in these parasocial relationships, such as with the talk show host Dennis Prager. And I started spending, every dollar I could get my hands on, sending Dennis Prager tapes to people who frequently, didn't want them and just laughed at me and thought I was mad. I mean, I was obviously coming from a pretty sad, bad, deluded, lonely, desperate place when I spent $1,000 on a gypsy to try to restore my relationship with Dennis Prager, which I had blown up through my online blogging about him. So wow, when I come from a place of that sadness, from that lack of meaningful connection with other people, that lack of meaningful love in my life, then I'm kind of embarrassed about a lot of the things that I've said and done and written online. How about the concept of being bored and disgusted with someone? I think that's pretty normal, right? And my major thought is, don't automatically cut someone out of your life because you're bored and disgusted. There are people that I have in my life who frequently bore and occasionally disgust me. And so spending times with friends, hanging out with friends is perhaps one thing that you shouldn't try to optimize, because in just my experience, like I can be at a social gathering for an hour or two and nothing much happens, but then the next hour is absolutely intoxicating, right? I can be social for 3 or 4 hours, and then I meet the woman that I end up dating for the next year. So I'm a big believer in turning people up or down in your life rather than turning them off. So if you're bored or disgusted with someone, reduce their proximity to you, reduce the frequency with which you interact with them, reduce the intensity, and reduce the duration. So yeah, there are people that I have in my life and that I see fairly regularly, but I don't see them every day. I would not want more of them. So I like that knob analogy, like turn people up if you want more of them, more intensity, more proximity, more frequency, more duration, turn people down. Thinking of environments. All right. Yeah. So if environments bore you and disgust you, particularly as you change, all right, then choose environments that stimulate you, that bring out the best in you. Right. I am a different person in a yoga studio than in a sports bar versus like a gay bar versus Dodger Stadium versus a synagogue versus a church versus a workplace versus a bookstore, the Los Angeles Press Club, writer gatherings, a sewing circle, a writing class, hiking trail. All right, I'm a different person in Sydney than I am in Los Angeles. So yeah, I'm a big believer in trying to spend as much time as possible in environments that bring out the best in me. Right? There's a lot of me that really doesn't need to come out that much, and so certain environments bring out a cynical side of me, a cruel side of me, a mocking side of me, an antisocial side of me, and so I reduce those. I never did another show like the Saturday Night Massacre of Jim Go because I didn't like consequences. I didn't like what it brought out for my life. It just didn't sit well with me, and so I haven't repeated that atmosphere.
And there are things that people can do which deflate that. And I think sometimes that people who are not acting like gurus, they are pundits producing content, they still are kind of twiddling the parasocial knobs to, like maybe just for monetary purposes or ego purposes. But I think there are people like Matt Taibbi, for example. I think he's definitely a pundit, but he encourages in his followers a kind of unhealthy devotion and like this view that he's leading them to the truth and that, the ecosystem that he's in is like the good guys with the bad guys. So, but I think if you're talking about like what is he, he's primarily like a bad political pundit.
This brings to mind, remember Rush Limbaugh's followers would call themselves ditto heads. But
yeah,
remember?
Pinheads. Isn't there someone? No, wait, that pinhead is what Bill
ditto
O'Reilly
heads
called
oh, okay.
his enemies. But who called themselves ditto heads?
Rush Limbaugh's followers, because they would call in and say ditto Rush about whatever he said. They would say ditto. And so they would call themselves ditto heads. It just reminds me of what you've described about Matt Taibbi, cultivating that kind of.
There's Chris Williamson told me, and he's recommended to various other people. There's some like how to.
So for some people, they can handle applause, all right? They can handle dittos, and it doesn't warp them. But most people seem to get warped by an avalanche of applause, all right? It's called audience capture, right? You so enjoy, you get so high, you get so addicted to the applause that you get from your audience that you become captured by your audience, and you are less willing to tell them hard truths that they don't want to hear.
Set up a podcast course, right? I think it's around about $200 or something, and a lot of podcasters, or at least kind of heterodox inclined podcasters, do it, right? And it gives you these kind of steps to go through to establish your YouTube channel. I think it's actually about setting up a YouTube channel. But one of the things that it was including was like to use rituals, like establish things that you do, right? Like maybe there's a sign on, or maybe there's a name for group members, or maybe there's like in the case of like Scott Adams, you have the simultaneous sip, right? Everybody drink the coffee together. And I know that's it seems like a stupid thing, but I actually
grovel at the feet of your muscle master, perhaps.
Yeah, sign off. Yeah, but so the thing is that in some respect you can't avoid that happening, right? Like if you have a long running series, you just get in jokes, right? And you get like kind of references that people won't understand. It happens like in anything that just like goes on, and there's no concrete harm in it. But it's also the thing that like it all depends what you're actually doing. And if you're kind of intentionally creating an insular group dynamic and the dynamics of your broader group are unhealthy, it's like it's a bad thing. But if it's just like I think that nobody can produce a show and not end up with there being like kind of in jokes or that.
Yeah. So what kind of shows, what kind of people tend to produce toxic communities? All right, people who don't have a lot of love in their life, right? If there are people you love, you don't want to let them down, you don't want to disappoint them, you don't want to hurt them, you don't want to damage them, you don't want to horrify them. when you needlessly offend people, when you needlessly horrify, offend people, you're hurting them. So that sense of carrying the people you love with you and not wanting to disappoint or hurt them or let them down, that's really healthy. It's a really beautiful thing to do. On the other hand, the people who are creating, these toxic shows, all right, I suspect there's not a lot of real world love pumping in their life.
That kind of stuff. So it isn't necessarily nefarious, but whenever I seen it in this like kind of guideline, which was like, do these rituals, give your followers names, right? Put this down.
Yeah.
You're like, that feels kind of creepy.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
And yet it works. Like, so
Yeah.
you kind of can't avoid it. And Seth mentioned Michael Shermer as like somebody, like that could be interesting, like Glenn Lurie. And I would put Shermer as interesting because to me, he's interesting because he's somebody that teaches people, gives TED Talks about conspiracism, and yet consistently falls for conspiracies or seems to have these massive blind spots. So he's interesting to me as just like somebody who has a reputation for being, good on conspiracy theories. But like, for example, he said he doesn't recognize anything conspiratorial about the lab leak communities, which is just like, it's so obvious. So I Shermer, and I have other issues with Shermer. But yeah,
I listened to his podcast for a short period of time, and I just couldn't stand it.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say on a recorded video.
Well,
I would rather you say these things.
Yeah, with Shermer, he's just. I remember a long time ago, like when I was interested in skepticism and stuff, there was a blog which had all the kind of big skeptics on it. I think it was called Skeptic Blog, and it had Stephen Novella and the guys from the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, and Michael Shermer was one of the like co-bloggers on it. And Shermer's blogging was invariably, like, I would describe it as pilled, but it was kind of libertarian pilled. Like, he mixed in his skepticism with his libertarian politics. And it was always, as a result, like a kind of weird mishmash of like a political spin with a weird, slight skeptical tinge to it. And I just was like, why would you do that? And then since then he had the rape allegations against him, but even
Michael Shermer did?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't rape, it might have been just sexual assault, but
wow, well, even less now.
I think whatever the validity of those accusations, the fact that they were made public.
Yeah, so you might be interested in an article, will misogyny bring down the atheist movement? So various women accused, Michael Shermer of taking advantage of them. The continuing debate over a murky sexual encounter at a 2008 convention for cheekily anti-establishment skeptics underscores a broader dilemma. How can a progressive, important intellectual community, the atheist community, behave so poorly toward its female peers? Well, here's why the community treats its women so badly, because men basically want to bang. And it usually takes a traditional society to constrain that. If men are not constrained by a traditional society, they're going to try to bang all the women that they can. Type of women who are attracted to an atheist movement are generally not going to be part of a traditional community, so they are going to be fair game, right? They are going to be raw meat for the natural predator, man, right? So men who are not constrained by their own traditional ties, men are not constrained by a feeling of not wanting to disappoint people, right, are going to be much more free to be predatory, particularly if they have some power and influence. And when men have the opportunity, they try to bang as many women as they can, right? Overwhelmingly, the type of men who stay faithful to their wives have few opportunities to cheat, right? The men who have a lot of opportunities to cheat, like men who work around attractive young women, very rarely stay faithful to their wives. A wife who goes into a workplace every day, right? She's much less likely to stay faithful to her husband than, a housewife who's at home looking after kids. So the more opportunities to, meet other people, develop intense feelings, have intense interactions, find common interests, find solace, start sharing and caring, right? Then, the more screwing around you're going to have. Right, this is the next director of the CDC.
So I would call, probably the person I called most was the Secretary of Health and Human Services in Massachusetts. She worked for a Republican governor just to, but you know, when she was like, "Are you going to let them have professional football?" And I was like, "Nope." And she's like, "Okay, neither are we. So you know, it was like conversations like that. So, or I'd be like, "So when are you going to think about lightening up a mess?" They're like, "Next Monday." I'm like, "Okay, next Monday." So I would call.
Yeah, so they may have made the right calls there. I don't see this as inherently heinous. I think it's worthy of skepticism. All right, so for women, like nurturing and safety in general seems to be more important values than they are for men. And sometimes women are right, and sometimes men are right. So I remember working with this couple, and not everyone to whom I sent Dennis Prager tapes, you know, found him a turnoff. Some people found him incredibly inspiring. They became Orthodox Jews as a result of the Dennis Prager tapes I shared with them. And one couple that became Orthodox Jews, right, they were walking with me beside this creek, and they had 3 kids, and the mother was just hovering all over the kids to make sure they didn't fall in the creek. And the father was just lackadaisical, like he was not hovering. And the mother said to him, "Well, you know, you don't have to carry a child in your belly for 9 months. All right. So that's why I'm hovering. That's why I care more. That's why I nurture more." All right. So do you enjoy this Chris Kavanaugh discussion here on pundits and gurus? So pundits give perspectives on the news of the day, but they don't give you wider life advice, and they don't try to build a parasocial relationship with you. So one of the marks of a guru is that they want to mentor you. They want to be your virtual friend. They want to be your virtual father. They want to be your virtual lover. They want to open your heart, open your mind, in many cases, open your legs as well. But the strictly pundit, non-guru type pundit is just giving you his perspective on the Federal Reserve or who are the Democrats going to nominate for president, and he doesn't give that wider life advice that someone like Dennis Prager dishes out. Coming up on Shabbat, we should probably get some Torah in us.
Lectures of the Rav, the relationship between halacha and agada, that when he taught, he used to give classes from circa 1950 at
So he's talking here about Joseph Ber Soloveitchik, a major modern Orthodox rabbi.
The Revel Graduate School. But you know the old joke that we all know about, that if we had a Christmas tree, there'd be all sorts of questions. Does it have to be from a real tree? How tall does it have to be? How long do you have to leave it? Is it enough to leave it 2 days, or do you have to leave it? How many nights are there? I don't even know how many nights they talk about the song. But so that's like a joke. But the Rav actually on page 30, in discussing how halacha always concretizes everything, he says, for example, if having a Christmas tree would be a mitzvah, the Masechta on it.
So halacha means Jewish law. Masechta means a Talmudic tractate.
Would first take up how many branches it must have, what kind it must be, how it is to stand. The result would be a series of intellectual laws, a mathematized tree, an atomized tree. The concept of hadar, beauty, and lulav is almost converted in halacha to quantity. So the Rav himself, if you ever mention this and people think you're joking, the Rav himself gives us an example of how Judaism is different than the non-halachic system of Christianity, in that, you know, for the Rav, everything arises out of halacha. Sometimes I say halacha. The Heschel, the Rav is said to have remarked about Heschel. I was reminded of this by listening to a podcast recently on my son's yeshiva, Oraita, podcast, that Heschel he wrote this great book on the Shabbos, the Sabbath. If you haven't read it, it's certainly very inspiring. But the Rav is said to have commented about this book, the Sabbath, that it's a great book, but it has nothing to do with Shabbos, because Shabbos for the Rav is the lamatas malachos. Everything has to be understood out of the halacha. Simply waxing lyrical about the Shabbos doesn't work. So it's the same thing.
So yeah, Shabbat does not come in for another 20 minutes, guys. So enjoy your secular time while you can.
Anything you have, menorah is only menorah because of the halachic discussions about that. I read this over Shabbos, or most of it. The Return to Zion, addresses on religious Zionism and American Orthodoxy. I'm actually more interested in the American Orthodoxy element of it, because these are talks from the Rav from 1939 through the 50s, translated from the Yiddish. This just came out, and one day someone's going to write a biography of the Rav that's going to have to encompass all of this, and this is quite important. But relevant to what we were discussing, on page 210, the Rav confesses to something really interesting. This is from a talk he gave in December 58 called The Mizrahi and the Jewish Dance of Eternity. Let me just read you what he says. When I came to America years ago, I felt the bitterness of loneliness, the need for companionship. I would often cry in private out of despair. When I joined the Mizrahi movement, it was not out of devotion to the cause, but because of the need of companionship. To whom could I attach myself? In the Mizrahi, I found friends who do not check each other's tzitzis. In the Yiddish, it says bodek tzitzis, or play around with bands, who know how much one can and one must demand.
Okay, tzitzit. All right, this is what I wear. These are the fringes, right? I like, the ones that are nice and airy and light, but they're a commandment in the Torah to wear fringes, so as to look at them and remind you of doing God's commandments. So when you wear tzitzit, it's, it's a lot harder to be gross. It's a lot harder to sin. They're kind of like a in-your-face reminder of God's commandments. So a little bit like Mormons have holy underwear too, don't they? So checking someone's tzitzit means, checking their level of Jewish observance. How religious are they? How faithful are they to the tradition?
I must say that I found then in the Mizrahi 2 comrades with whom I maintained a friendship down to the present day. So the Rav is telling us here that when he first joined the Mizrahi in the early 40s, it wasn't really about Zionism. It wasn't because he concluded that this is the proper approach. He just...
Right. A lot of reasons people join a church, join a synagogue, join a political, social, cultural, sporting movement, all right, is not ideological. It's just to have, a social outlet, just to be with friends, right? People will go to synagogue rather than go to ball games or go to bars or go to, secular activities if their needs are met more at synagogue than in secular activities. People will desert synagogues and churches if their basic needs are met more effectively outside of churches and synagogues. But if you go to church or go to synagogue and you have a burning core of friendships there, right, you're going to keep going back and back and back, and you're going to spend a lot of time there if there are people there that you love. So sometimes you can go to a church, or you can go to a synagogue, or you can go to a mosque, and you're inspired, you're fired up, you like the people there. It has an effect on you, it makes you finer, kinder, wiser, more adapted for dealing with the hardships of life. If you find such a place, you're going to return again and again and again, even if you're not ideologically on board with all the proclamations of that particular house of worship.
Was fed up with Aguda, as he says. They play around with bands, they check each other's tzitzis. That he didn't want an environment like that. Later.
So Aguda Yisrael, is a right of center Orthodox movement.
He becomes the great spokesman of Mizrahi. Remember, he was never opposed to Mizrahi. I already showed you how in the 30s, when he was officially a member of Aguda, he also signed declarations for Mizrahi.
Liv Medley says, let your tzitzit go free. If they don't come back to you, you weren't halakhic anyway.
But I mean, he believed both. He was really part of both of those worlds. He could go between both those worlds. But here he tells us that it was the extremism in the Aguda that led him to Mizrahi. And once he's in Mizrahi, then I guess you could say he develops these ideas. Mark says the comments about Hilchos Christmas. That's the shiurim I was just reading about. If there's something else, let me know. Last class we had a big discussion. Why is it there's halacha you have to light Shabbos candles, but there's no bracha in the Gemara. So where do we get this idea? It's from the Gaonim. So the question was raised. This was a tangent over something else we were speaking about. Why aren't there people who don't say the bracha on Shabbos candles? We know that Sephardim don't say the bracha, not all of them, but generally Rosh Chodesh on
So bracha means blessing. Rosh Chodesh is the new month. So Judaism has a lunar calendar rather than a solar calendar.
Rosh Chodesh, Rav Ovadia says, and other Sephardim don't say Shasani Kirsan with the bracha, don't say Leif Koach. So I didn't really have an answer for that, but I investigated it. And it's actually Machokas and Rishonim. If you look in the Torah, in Simon.
Okay, Rishonim. I think they're like 12th century, 10th century, 11th to 15th century, right? So if you ever get in trouble in a Jewish halakhic discussion, just always, you can bail yourself out just to say, it's a machlokas Rishonim. That means it's an argument between various 11th to 15th century leading rabbis.
He says, there are those who say you don't make a bracha on the Shabbos candles. I don't know of anyone who doesn't. Even the Yemenites make the bracha. But I have all the sources in this sefer I have. It's called Ner Yom Tov by Rav Ratzabi. Because the Yemenites don't make a bracha on Ner Yom Tov candles. The difference here, as he explains, is that there's a chiyuv to light Shabbos candles. So now that we have a chiyuv to light Shabbos candles, already the Gaonim institute should make a bracha. So
okay, maybe I should go make a bracha on my Shabbos candles. Take care. Bye-bye.